Olaf II Haraldsson, later known as Saint Olaf, was King of Norway from 1015 to 1028. He was posthumously given the title Rex Perpetuus Norvegiae and canonized in Nidaros by Bishop Grimkell, 1 year after his death in the Battle of Stiklestad on 29 July 1030. His remains were enshrined in Nidaros Cathedral, built over his burial site. Olaf's local canonization was in 1164 confirmed by Pope Alexander III, making him a universally recognized saint of the Roman Catholic Church, and a commemorated historical figure among some members of the Anglican Communion. He is also a canonized saint of the Eastern Orthodox Church, and one of the last famous Western saints before the Great Schism. The exact position of St. Olaf's grave in Nidaros has been unknown since 1568, due to the Lutheran iconoclasm in 1536–37. St. Olaf is symbolized by the axe in Norway's coat of arms, and the Olsik is still his day of celebration. Many Christian institutions with Scandinavian links and Norway's Order of St. Olaf are named after him. Modern historians generally agree that Olaf was inclined to violence and brutality, and they accuse earlier scholars of neglecting this side of Olaf's character, especially during the period of Romantic nationalism. Olaf was a symbol of national independence and pride, presented to suit contemporary attitudes. Name: Olaf II's Old Norse name is Olaf Haraldsson. During his lifetime he was known as Olaf the Fat or the Stout, or simply as Olaf the Big. In Norway today, he is commonly referred to as Olav den Hellige Olav in honor of his sainthood. Olaf Haraldsson had the given name Olaf in Old Norse. Olav is the modern equivalent in Norwegian, formerly often spelt Olaf. His name in Icelandic is Olafur, in Faroese Olafur, in Danish Olif, in Swedish Olif. Oliv was the traditional spelling in England, preserved in the name of medieval churches dedicated to him. Other names, such as Olaf hin Helgi, Olavis Rex, and Olaf are used interchangeably. He is sometimes referred to as Rex Perpetuus Norvegiae, a designation which goes back to the 13th century. The term Olin Nordmann as epithet of the archetypal Norwegian may originate in this tradition, as Olav was for centuries the most common male name in Norway. Background: Olaf was born in Ringerike. His mother was Astegud Bronsdatter, and his father was Harald Grenski, great-great-her child of Harald Fairhair, the first king of Norway. Harald Grenski died when Astegud Bronsdatter was pregnant with Olaf. She later married Sigurd Syr, with whom she had other children including Harald Hardrada, who would reign as a future king of Norway. A widely used account of Olaf's life is found in Heimskringla from c. 1225. Although its facts are dubious, the saga recounts Olaf's deeds as follows. About 1008, Olaf landed on the Estonian island of Saaremaa. The Osilians, taken by surprise, had at first agreed to pay the demands made by Olaf, but then gathered an army during the negotiations and attacked the Norwegians. Olaf nevertheless won the battle. Olaf sailed to the southern coast of Finland sometime in 1008 plunder. The journey resulted to battle at Herdala, where Olaf and his men were eventually ambushed in the woods. Olaf lost a lot of men but made it back to his boats. He ordered his ships to take off when a storm was rising. Finns started a pursuit and made the same progress on land as Olaf and his men made with ships. Despite of these events, they eventually survived. The exact location of the battle is uncertain, and the Finnish equivalent for the place Herdala is not known. It is suggested that the place could be Uusimaa region of Finland. As a teenager he went to the Baltic, then to Denmark and later to England. Skaldic poetry suggests he led a successful seaborne attack which pulled down London Bridge, though this is not confirmed by Anglo-Saxon sources. This may have been in 1014, restoring London and the English throne to Ethelred the Unready and removing Canute. Olaf saw it as his call to unite Norway into one kingdom, as his ancestor Harald Fairhair had largely succeeded in doing. On the way home he wintered with Duke Richard II of Normandy. This region had been conquered by Norsemen in the year 881. Duke Richard was himself an ardent Christian, and the Normans had also previously converted to Christianity. Before leaving, Olaf was baptized in Rouen in the pre-Romanesque Notre Dame Cathedral by the Norman Duke's own brother Robert the Dane, Archbishop of Normandy. Olaf returned to Norway in 1015 and declared himself king, obtaining the support of the 5 petty kings of the uplands. In 1016 at the Battle of Nesjar he defeated Earl Sweyn, one of the Earls of Leyden, hitherto the virtual ruler of Norway. He founded the town of Borg, later to be known as Sarpsborg, by the waterfall Sarpsfossen in Østfold County. Within a few years he had won more power than had been enjoyed by any of his predecessors on the throne. He had annihilated the petty kings of the south, subdued the aristocracy, asserted his suzerainty in the Orkney Islands, and conducted a successful raid on Denmark. He made peace with King Olaf's Konung of Sweden through Thornir the law speaker, and was for some time engaged to Olaf's daughter, Princess Ingegerd, though without Olaf's approval. In 1019 Olaf married Astrid, Olaf's daughter, Olaf's illegitimate daughter and the half-sister of his former fiancée. The daughter Wulfhild married Ordulf, Duke of Saxony, in 1042. Numerous royal, grand ducal and ducal lines are descended from Ordulf and Wulfrid, including the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Maud of Wales, daughter of King Edward VII of the United Kingdom, was the mother of King Olaf V of Norway, so Olaf and his son Harald V, the present King of Norway, are thus descended from Olaf. But Olaf's success was short-lived. In 1026 he lost the Battle of the Helge, and in 1029 the Norwegian nobles, seething with discontent, supported the invasion of King Canute the Great of Denmark. Olaf was driven into exile in Kiev and Rus. He stayed for some time in Sweden in the province of Nerike where, according to local legend, he baptized many locals. In 1029, Canute's Norwegian regent, Jarl Håkon Eriksson, was lost at sea. Olaf seized the opportunity to win back the kingdom, but he fell in 1030 at the Battle of Stiklestad, where some of his own subjects from central Norway took arms against him. Canute, though distracted by the task of governing England, managed to rule Norway for 5 years after Stiklestad, with his son Sven and Sven's mother Eylfgifu as regents. However, the regency was unpopular, and when Olaf's illegitimate son Magnus laid claim to the Norwegian throne, Sven and Eylfgifu were forced to flee. Problems of Olaf as Christianizing king. Traditionally, Olaf has been seen as leading the Christianization of Norway. However, most scholars of the period now recognize that Olaf himself had little to do with the Christianization process. Olaf brought with him Grimkell, who is usually credited with helping Olaf create episcopal sees and further organizing the Norwegian church. Grimkell, however, was only a member of Olaf's household and no permanent sees were created until c. 1100. Also, Olaf and Grimkell most likely did not introduce new ecclesiastical laws to Norway, but these were ascribed to Olaf at a later date. Olaf most likely did try to bring Christianity to the interior of Norway, where it was less prevalent. Also, questions have been raised about the nature of Olaf's Christianity itself. It seems that Olaf, like many Scandinavian kings, used his Christianity to gain gain more power for the monarchy and centralize control in Norway. The skaldic verses attributed to Olaf do not speak of Christianity at all, but in fact use pagan references to describe romantic relationships, and in some cases, this being because Olaf likely had many wives. Anders Winroth, in his book The Conversion of Scandinavia, tries to make sense of this problem by arguing that there was a long process of assimilation in which the Scandinavians adopted, one by one and over time, individual Christian practices. Quote, Winroth certainly does not say that Olaf was not Christian, but he argues that we cannot think of any Scandinavians as quickly converting in a full way as portrayed in the later hagiographies or sagas. Olaf himself is portrayed in later sources as a saintly miracle-working figure to help support this quick view of conversion for Norway, although the historical Olaf did not act this way, as seen especially in the skaldic verses attributed to him. Sainthood. Olaf swiftly became Norway's patron saint. His canonization was performed only a year after his death by Bishop Grimkell. The cult of Olaf not only unified the country, it also fulfilled the conversion of the nation, something for which the king had fought so hard. Owing to Olaf's later status as the patron saint of Norway, and to his importance in later medieval historiography and in Norwegian folklore, it is difficult to assess the character of the historical Olaf. Judging from the bare outlines of known historical facts, he appears, more than anything else, as a fairly unsuccessful ruler, whose power was based on some sort of alliance with the much more powerful King Canute the Great, who was driven into exile when he claimed power of his own, and whose attempt at a reconquest was swiftly crushed. This calls for an explanation of the status he gained after his death. Three factors are important: the later myth surrounding his role in the Christianization of Norway, the various dynastic relationships among the ruling families, and the need for legitimization in a later period. Conversion of Norway. Olaf Haraldsson and Olaf Tryggvason together are traditionally regarded as the driving forces behind Norway's final conversion to Christianity. However, large stone crosses and other Christian symbols suggest that at least the coastal areas of Norway were deeply influenced by Christianity long before Olaf's time. With one exception, all the rulers of Norway back to Haakon the Good had been Christians, and Olaf's main opponent, Canute the Great, was a Christian ruler. What seems clear is that Olaf made efforts to establish a church organization on a broader scale than before, among other things by importing bishops from England, Normandy and Germany, and that he tried to enforce Christianity also in the inland areas, which had the least communication with the rest of Europe, and which economically were more strongly based on agriculture, so that the inclination to hold on to the former fertility cult would have been stronger than in the more diversified and expansive western parts of the country. Many believe Olaf introduced Christian law into the country in 1024, based upon the writing of the Kuli stone. This stone, however, is hard to interpret, and we cannot be entirely sure what the stone is referring to. In any case, the codification of Christianity as the legal religion of Norway was attributed to Olaf, and his legal arrangements for the Church of Norway came to stand so high in the eyes of the Norwegian people and clergy that when Pope Gregory VII attempted to make clerical celibacy binding on the priests of Western Europe in 1074–75, the Norwegians largely ignored it, since there was no mention of clerical celibacy in Olaf's legal code for the Church. Only after Norway was made a metropolitan province with its own archbishop in 1153, which made the Norwegian Church, on the one hand, more independent of its king, but, on the other hand, more directly responsible to the Pope, did canon law gain a greater prominence in the life and jurisdiction of the Norwegian Church. Sigurd Undset noted that Olaf was baptized in Rouen, the capital of Normandy, and suggested that Olaf used priests of Norman descent for his missionaries. These priests would be of Norse heritage, could speak the language, and shared the culture of the people they were to convert. Since the Normans themselves had only been in Normandy for about 2 generations, these priests might, at least in some cases, be distant cousins of the new parishioners and thus less likely to be killed when Olaf and his army departed. The few surviving manuscripts and the printed missal used in the Archdiocese of Nidaros show a clear dependence on the missals used in Normandy. It should be mentioned that King Olaf II's attempts to convert Norway involved coercion and violence, is described in the Heimskringla and other sources. Olaf's dynasty, for various reasons, most importantly the death of King Canute the Great in 1035, but perhaps even a certain discontent among Norwegian nobles with the Danish rule in the years after Olaf's death in 1030. His illegitimate son with the concubine Alvhild, Magnus the Good, assumed power in Norway, and eventually also in Denmark. Numerous churches in Denmark were dedicated to Olaf during his reign, and the sagas give glimpses of similar efforts to promote the cult of his deceased father on the part of the young king. This would become typical in the Scandinavian monarchies. It should be remembered that in pagan times the Scandinavian kings derived the right to rule from the claims of descent from the Norse god Odin, or in the case of the kings of the Swedes at Old Uppsala, from Frey. In Christian times this legitimation of a dynasty's right to rule and its national prestige would be based on its descent from a saintly king. Thus the kings of Norway promoted the cult of St.Olaf, the kings of Sweden the cult of Saint Eric, and the kings of Denmark the cult of Saint Canute. Just as in England the Norman and Plantagenet kings similarly promoted the cult of Saint Edward the Confessor at Westminster Abbey, their coronation church. St. Olaf. Among the bishops that Olaf brought with him from England was Grimkell. He was probably the only one of the missionary bishops who was left in the country at the time of Olaf's death, and he stood behind the translation and beatification of Olaf on the 3rd of August 1031. Grimkell later became the first bishop of Sigtuna in Sweden. At this time, local bishops and the people recognized and proclaimed a person a saint, and a formal canonization procedure through the papal curia was not customary in Olaf's case. This did not happen until 1888. However, Olaf II died before the East-West Schism, and a strict Roman rite was not well established in Scandinavia at the time. He is venerated also in the Eastern Orthodox Church with great pride by many Orthodox Christians, especially Westerners. Grimkell was later appointed bishop in the Diocese of Chelsea in the southeast of England. This is probably the reason why the earliest traces of the liturgical cult of St. Olaf are found in England. An office, or prayer service, for St. Olaf is found in the so-called Leo Frigg Collector, which was bequeathed in his last will and testament by Bishop Leo Frigg of Exeter to Exeter Cathedral. This English cult seems to have been short-lived. Adam of Bremen, writing around 1070, mentions pilgrimage to St. Olaf's shrine in Nidaros, but this is the only firm trace we have of a cult of St. Olaf in Norway before the middle of the 12th century. By this time he was also being referred to as Norway's eternal king. In 1152, Nidaros was separated from Lund as the Archbishopric of Nidaros. It is likely that whatever formal or informal, which we do not know, veneration of Olaf as a saint there may have been in Nidaros prior to this, was emphasized and formalized on this occasion. In Thoraren Loftunger's Skaldet poem Gleilonskvidet, or Sea Calm poem, dated to about 1030x34, we hear for the first time of miracles performed by Saint Olaf. One is the killing and throwing onto a mountain of a sea serpent still visible on the cliffside. Another took place on the day of his death, when a blind man regained his sight after rubbing his eyes with hands stained with the blood of the saint. The texts which were used for the liturgical celebration of St. Olaf during most of the Middle Ages were probably compiled written by Eystein Erlendsson, the second Archbishop of Nidaros. The 9 miracles reported in Glælonskvidder form the core of the catalogue of miracles in this office. St. Olaf was widely popular not only in Norway but throughout Scandinavia. Numerous churches in Norway, Sweden, and Iceland were dedicated to him. His presence was even felt in Finland, and many travelled from all over the Norse world in order to visit his shrine. Apart from the early traces of a cult in England, there are only scattered references to him outside the Nordic area. Several churches in England were dedicated to him. The name was presumably popular with Scandinavian immigrants. St. Olaf's Church, York, is referred to in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle for 1055 as the place of burial of its founder, Earl Siward. This is generally accepted to be the earliest datable church foundation dedicated to Olaf and is further evidence of a cult of St. Olaf in the early 1050s in England. St. Olaf Hart Street in the City of London is the burial place of Samuel Pepys and his wife. Another street, Olaf's Church south of London Bridge, gave its name to Tooley Street and to the St. Olaf's Poor Law Union, later to become the Metropolitan Borough of Bermondsey. Its workhouse in Rotherhithe became St. Olaf's Hospital and then an old people's home a few hundred metres from St. Olav's Church, which is the Norwegian church in London. It also led to the naming of St. Olav's Grammar School, which was established in 1571 and up until 1968 was situated in Tooley Street. In 1968 the school was moved to Orpington, Kent. St. Olaf was also, together with the Mother of God, the patron saint of the Chapel of the Varangians, the Scandinavian warriors who served as the bodyguard of the Byzantine Emperor. This church is believed to have been located near the Church of Hagia Irene in Constantinople. The icon of the Madonna Nicopia, presently in St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, which is believed to have been traditionally carried into combat by the Byzantine military forces, is believed to have been kept in this chapel in times of peace. Thus St. Olaf was also the last saint to be venerated by both the Western and Eastern churches before the Great Schism. There is also a chapel dedicated to St. Olaf in the Church of Sant'Ambrogio e Carlo al Corso in Rome. Its altarpiece was a painting of the saint, shown as the Viking king defeating a dragon, a gift presented to Pope Leo XIII in 1893 for the Golden Jubilee of his ordination as a bishop by his papal chamberlain, Baron Wilhelm Wedel Jarlsberg. San Carlo al Corso may have the only surviving Catholic shrine of St. Olaf outside Norway. In Germany, there used to be a shrine of St. Olaf in Koblenz. It had been installed in 1463 or 1464 by Heinrich Kalteisen at his retirement home, the Dominican Monastery in the Altstadt neighborhood of Koblenz. He had been the Archbishop of Nidaros in Norway for 6 years, from 1452 to 1458. When he died in 1464, he was buried in front of the shrine's altar. But the shrine did not last. The Dominican monastery was secularized in 1802 and bulldozed in 1955. Only the Rococo portal, built in 1754, remains to mark the spot. Recently the pilgrimage route to Nidaros Cathedral, the site of St. Olaf's tomb, has been reinstated. The route is known as St. Olaf's Way. The main route, which is approximately 640 kilometers long, starts in the ancient part of Oslo and heads north along Lake Josa, up the Gudbrandsdal Valley, over Dovrefjell and down the Orkdal Valley to end at Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim. There is a pilgrim's office in Oslo which gives advice to pilgrims, and a pilgrim center in Trondheim, under the aegis of the cathedral, which awards certificates to successful pilgrims upon the completion of the journey. But the relics of St. Olaf are no longer in the Nidaros Cathedral. On the 29th of July, the day of St. Olaf's death, the Faroe Islands celebrate Olavsuka, the national day when they remember St. Olaf, the king who Christianized the islands. The Faroes are the only country to keep this day as a holiday. Other instances of St. Olaf Street. Olaf College was founded by Norwegian immigrant Bjørn Julius Moe in Northfield, Minnesota, in 1874. St. Olav's Cathedral, Oslo, the main cathedral of the Roman Catholic Church in Norway. St. Olav's Church is the tallest church in Tallinn, Estonia, and between 1549 and 1625 was the tallest building in the world. The coat of arms of the Church of Norway contains two axes, the instruments of St. Olaf's martyrdom. The oldest picture of St. Olaf is painted on a column in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. The Royal Norwegian Order of St. Olaf was founded in 1847 by Oscar I, King of Norway and Sweden, in memory of the king. There is a St. Olaf Catholic Church in downtown Minneapolis. There is a St. Olaf Catholic Church in Norwich, Virginia. There is a St. Olaf Catholic Church and School in Bountiful. The primary school and GAA club in Ballally, Dublin, Ireland are both named for St. Olaf. The Tower of St. Olaf is the only remaining tower of Viborg Castle. TSC St. Olaf is a Dutch student organization with St. Olaf as its patron. Ancestors from the sagas. It is unlikely that Olaf II was a descendant of Harald I. The ancestors in the following family tree must be treated as legendary. Note: Eystein Erlendsson is commonly believed to have written a Miracula Bitiolaui. This Latin hagiographical work is about the history and work of St. Olaf, with particular emphasis on his missionary work. This article incorporates text from a publication now in the public domain. Chisholm, Hugh, ed. Article name needed. Encyclopaedia Britannica, Cambridge University Press.